Hello and welcome to Yellow Card TCG. I am here with the finals of the VPL. We are on game 1 out of 10 and I'm joined by my good friend Sage1804, also known as April to some.
Yep, I'm Sage. I played in the VPL under the Crow's Nest team where I played Zorga for 6 weeks and I went 3-3. I have also played a lot of premium, specifically Grand Blue, and Ben has very kindly invited me in here to come and commentate one of the finals games. The game that we're about to watch is between Welstra and Ava, and I think it's a matchup that is pretty Ava favoured, but also is very dependent on who goes first. So it's going to be interesting to see how things unfold in the early part of the game.
Yep, so in the finals we have Team Owl Coop versus Team Dinobozos. Some might suggest at this moment in time that you might be slightly biased towards the Owl Coop, but we're not going to go too deep into that. So we've
I would
got
never be.
Zeph from the Dinobozos versus RelaxingNaps from the Owl Coop. And obviously I know the result, but you don't at the time of this recording. And yeah, it's interesting that you say that that this matchup is Ava favored, because if there's one thing that I've noticed with Ava builds as of time of recording, which is just before DZ03 meta, is that they're not playing as many copies of the grade 1 research anymore, which means that as a result, Welstra can actually just retire Obscurades at will, and then Ava just suddenly loses a lot of the shield, which is where part of its strength comes from.
Yeah, I mean, they can do that, but Ava, since it's more consistent in the early game now, they can usually set one of those and just leave it there for until about turn 5, and then decide to put it in once the game is pretty much over. Obviously, they can't do that if they need to find their Immigra and they have to do double torrential, but it is very easy for them to just get that and just use it as retire protection rather than an advantage piece.
Mm-hmm. And there's again, you also interesting that you mentioned between going first and second, because I would have thought that Welstra wants to go second so that it can reliably use the grade 1 ride decks on ride to search for Lubetzel. And then obviously Ava also wants to go first because it can start pressuring with Obscurades instantly. But here we see Welstra going first.
Mm. I mean, going first with Welstra's fine. You just have to hard mulligan for your Lubetzel, and in addition to that, you just get the fact that you're now attacking into a 5 or a 0k Vanguard, and most of your numbers with maximum, they're very hard to defend with, and Ava doesn't have as much time to start searching their PGs and compressing their deck when they're only on grade 2.
Yeah. We see there though, however, uh, Zeph does find the discard Immigraph for turn 1 ride, which is very, very solid. Oh, sorry. RelaxingNaps gets the turn 1 discard of Immigra, which is exactly what you want to be. Going second also means they have the energy to then instantly pull out that Immigra with the torrential energy if they choose. Finds an PG off the top 5, discards a second Immigra. So I think having that second Immigra in the drop zone means that you now definitely commit the Energy Blast 3 with the first one.
Yeah, that's just a very strong play. The ability to just get multiple grade 1s out on turn 1 is probably the strongest thing in Standard currently, so just getting your advantage piece and you've got your guaranteed turn 3,
Yep.
it's a super good opening for Ava.
Of course, Welstra also is a deck that doesn't exactly scale with early counterblast very well. It's a deck that wants to have 2 to 3 counterblast going into turn 3, but having 2 damage going into turn 2 is definitely not ideal.
Yeah, although Welstra, it does run a lot of counter charges, so every extra damage is just a piece they don't need to see for their combo. So I wouldn't be too worried as a Welstra player when I'm getting rushed. It's more just, will I be able to survive and do multiple pressure turns before they end up dying?
Yeah, so we see the Freiheit went to damage, which is a very important combo piece for the deck, along
Mm.
with the Bagina being guarded with, which is another critical combo piece. So Zeph here is now at a crossroads, I think, which is RelaxingNaps called the Immigrant to the front row, well, obviously to rush, which is what you want to be doing. But now this opens up an interesting quandary. Welstra definitely can virtually never multi-lane before turn 3. So he's got his Vanguard attack. We see he had the open the Lubetzel there, which is very solid. But now, so this Uber attacks. It doesn't need to attack a Vanguard to do the Energy Blast 3 operate and draw. Is there argument to attacking the Immigrant to deny RelaxingNaps that Immigrant piece on the board and start starving them with Counterblast?
I feel that as the set progresses, we'll know whether this is a correct play or not, because Eva is divided into sort of two camps: the Valtrossa camp and the Combine Rusher camp, for like what you want to spend your additional CB on. If I was facing into a Combine Rusher player, I would be less scared because you want them to be using their CB before they're having to rebuild their board again and again and again in the late game. But a Valtrossa player being able to high roll you into like 2 or 3 another tri-lane turn, that's when I would consider maybe I should just swing at the rear, deny them, and then push them on the turn 3.
Yep, so we see there that RelaxingNaps guarded anyway, so we aren't listening to the game audio, so we're not sure whether or not that Uber attacked the Vanguard or the rear guard, but RelaxingNaps has denied themselves with the counterblast regardless, so we won't know if it's a case of they attacked Vanguard and wanted to deny damage, or attacked rear and wanted to keep the rear on board.
Because it is also possible that Ava just realizes they're going to take a lot on turn 3, and they just want to have a more chance of checking defensives.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that here he went for the results of the experiment henceforth, because he's already got his Immigras, and so like he's just fine with setting up the retire protection for later on in the game. He also managed to search out a PG.
Yep, and you've got the Radabilio there to make numbers on the Immigra that's not getting plus 2k. However, my concern here with committing both Immigras this early on is that obviously Welstra is now going to go into turn 3. They will have a bunch of damage to play with. It's very likely that your entire board is getting retired here. And so, there's a good chance both of those Immigras get retired by Freischütz Maximums. So, the argument there is that RelaxingNaps then might be unable to actually, unless they find a third Immigra, they might not even be able to go into Poison Paradise this turn, or next turn.
Yeah, that's definitely understandable. I think probably that play has been done because he knows he's got the Order in hand to call back the Immigra. The thing I'm more worried about in this game state is committing a Radiabilio so early, especially if his list doesn't play that many, because it's what makes Eva into a deck that is very threatening on the offense and just ask for PG checks.
Yeah.
And so if Welstra just gets rid of 2 to 3 early, it kind of wins in the grind.
So Yuba's Rideline skill there, searching out the standard 2 grade 3 orders, and then we're just going to immediately lead off with the Divine skill and then operate Lubetzel. So Welstra's guarded quite aggressively here, which means that unless they find multiple countercharges this turn, it's going to be really hard for them to do the 5 attack Lubetzel Freischütz Maximum line that Welstra is known for. And sure, you can still operate the Freischütz Maximum to retire, but you're not getting as much aggressive value.
I mean, they can't even get the 5 attack line off here because they need another counterblast in main phase.
Yes.
To put a Freischütz Maximum into order zone.
Right, you're here. So this Freiheit is coming in off of the Lubetzel, and again, not having the counterblast there means that Zeph is unable to search Persona Ride as well, and so if he needed that, he's also going to be struggling going into turn 4.
Yeah.
Then we've got the on-play energy charge and draw from the laser. So we'll see what kind of board he makes here, because again, without counterblast, he has no other real source of operation other than the Freiheit on attack. So he's committed the second Freiheit here. But it's also worth mentioning that if he had, say, a Bergine or something else, he's not going to be able to get the value off of that either. So he's going to leave with the Vanguard attack straight away. It looks like an operate on, Freischütz Maximum to retire the Radabilios. No counter charges were being committed, so definitely no Freischütz Maximum being called to rearguard here. But then that's also dangerous for Zeph now, because he's left 2 of Freiheits on the board. There's a third one in his damage zone. There's a world here where RelaxingNaps could go into the grade 2 Obscured and just take 3 out of his 4 Freiheits out of rotation.
Yeah, I think that would be a very potent turn. However, just checking 2 crits is also a very strong play, even if you don't have your Freischütz Maximum, so
1 defensive, 2 defensives. That will put RelaxingNaps up to a 25k Vanguard.
Yeah, 25.
Which I think blanks both of these Freiheits, because he gave 1 trigger to each. So for these Freiheits to hit, the first one now needs the Soul Blast 2 to operate the Freischütz Maximum, which I think he's incentivized to do anyway, to, again, as we discussed, just take
Yeah.
Immigra off the board. But again,
Mhm.
not seeing pieces like the Bobalmine or the Balderreed or even the grade 1 that when you put a product into the order zone into soul countercharge means that he doesn't have the soul for the second Freiheit either.
Yeah. Another thing also, just whiffing, say, the second laser means he wasn't able to EB7 this turn, so he would have been able to dig deeper if he saw that.
Yes. I think that's the other thing I like about like Welstra going second is that when you ride grade 3, you'll have to 9 energy after playing the laser, which then gives you the chance like Energy Blast 7 to draw before you enter the battle phase, and then Energy Blast 2 for Welstra. So,
Yeah.
also worth mentioning again, without the Bergina, he also chose to operate Freischütz Maximum twice rather than Lubatzel. So Zeph hasn't really plussed as much as Welstra would like, especially again, no Balderreed, no Schwarze Eins. Meanwhile, RelaxingNaps here took a bunch of damage, but now can convert that damage into resources.
Plus, those he was operating maximums, but none of them were bouncing his Freiheits back to hand, so they weren't even providing a plus in their usual sense.
Yeah, so you see here Zeph only had like 7 or 8 cards in hand. RelaxingNaps doesn't have as much either, because we did see a little bit of guarding coming in that turn. Combine comes down, so it doesn't hit the Obscurate off the top.
He
But
still can go for it with Eva's skill, but I don't know if you want the crit pressure over that at this point.
yeah, especially as we've discussed, having that grade 2 Obscurate to take 3 out of 4 Freihats out of rotation is really strong here.
Mm.
Of course, the Combine Rusher does get the 10k going second, which is one of the strengths of Ava going second, is that you just play unfettered, you still have your Poison and Paradise Superior Ride. You can still do pretty much everything you need to do without anything like hindering you at all, which is, of course, really strong. So the positioning of the Immigra here, I think, is actually quite important, because obviously this Immigra is going to be the 10k, so it's going to be making very specific numbers, and the other one, as we've seen, goes into Soul.
This is honestly one of the best things about Ava, is that when you go into your Poison in Paradise, it gets you your order for next turn. So you can then call out the Immigra, which gets you the Poison in Paradise, which gets you the order, etc., etc. It's a very powerful resource loop.
Yeah, as long as you can see the Secondal to Soul Boss the Immigras and recycle Poison Paradises, you're pretty much set. And so, like I was saying about earlier about the numbers, here we see that 10k Immigra. So obviously that Immigra is definitely not going to boost this Combine Rusher. The Combine Rusher is going to be 20k, and then be called over with an Obscurate, and then Immigra will boost that Obscurate to be presumably 33. And there's worlds where like you put the Immigra behind Vanguard to make the Vanguard magic numbers, or you have like multiple Immigras, one of which is the 8k, which then can boost Combine Rusher for magic numbers. But given that Immigra's on that side with the Combine Rusher, I think we're going to see the grade 3 Obscurate come down just for crit pressure, just to equalize.
Yeah, you don't also need a Vanguard booster that much in a game state like this, because your Eva's already 18, so you have to commit multiple cards if you want to tutor pass it.
So we are going to see the instant boost. So it's going to be 30k coming in at Vanguard.
Mm.
And the defensive comes down. So do you think then, having committed this boost, this might then... No, okay, so it is going to be the grade 3 Obscurate, not the grade 2 Obscurate.
I think if he goes for the boost, it's sort of a perfect position to get out your grade 2 Obscurate in, because even if it doesn't hit the Vanguard, you're still just forcing two 15ks out to protect the Freiheits.
Yep. Meanwhile, 3 to 2, like, the crit pressure is nice, but it's not critical. I think it's a 2 to pass we see coming in here. So yeah, all to the Obscurate. Sorry. That's the natural path from its own Obscurate, so we're seeing where the trigger's going here now. I think it would make sense to go all to the other Obscurate just to force damage parity.
Both Obscurates are currently 28. So. It's interesting that he decides to give the 10k to the one without the crit.
Well, the one without the crit gained the crit from the trigger, so they'd be even regardless.
Oh, true, yeah.
Yep. But then again, the other issue here is that when you have two Obscurates with crit, you're incentivized to throw them at your opponent's Vanguard, to make value out of the damage, which means that you're now not taking out those Freiheits. So all that damage you are now giving Welstra, they can now convert into call a Bergina, do something, and then Freiheit go to the races.
Mm. Although theoretically he's now got what's going to be a very important point in this matchup when Welstra's at 4 damage, because at that point they can be denied, and you can, as an EVA player, swing with 2 crit or just Vanguards and never give them the 5th CB, and that chokes out their resources quite a lot.
Yep. So playing a bit slow here, we find the Ballerine, which now gives you the soul to operate one of those Freiheits. And now that you've won Persona Ride, now that you're past your first grade 3 turn, you can now operate laser every turn. So you definitely want to be swinging with Vanguard first. So that Ballerine will now go into soul to fuel a Freiheit. It then just comes into a case of, as we discussed earlier, that grade 1 order came down very early. So this laser here basically has to retire Immigra. And yeah, so like those Obsculades are now providing value, which is exactly the situation that Ava wants to be in.
Yeah. Well, going to 4 means Ava is very incentivized to close it out next turn. If going through 2 Welstra Persona turns, that's tough for basically any deck.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this number alone is already pretty solid. It's 36k coming in at your 3k Vanguard.
Isn't it 46?
It is 46. Yeah, I was counting Persona Ride. So yeah, we see the PG being dropped there. And interesting to note as well, this turn, Zeph didn't put down any other orders, like, no second laser, no extra Lubetzel. They obviously haven't found the 4th Freiheit to get their second copy of Freischutz Maximum. So we are seeing, it's only going to be 4 attacks max. And I think that's kind of one of the quote-unquote weaknesses of Welstra, which is that once your opponent goes from 4 to 5 damage, that's when laser turns off, and that's when you're sort of more incentivized to chase the 5 attack pattern with the double Freischutz Maximum, which obviously can be difficult for you to get to that point if you've been playing the grind game.
Yeah, especially when it asks for 2 counterblast for soul each turn, it can put a strain on your resources.
We do find that 4th Freiheit though, which is great.
That is definitely good. Being able to double Freiheit next turn if necessary, that gives them a lot of options.
It is also worth mentioning, compared to Ava's pressures, that the crux of being on 4 versus 5 damage, Ava loves it when you're on 4 damage because suddenly all of the Obsculades are lethal, and then there's no way you can no-guard the Vanguard because obviously Ava will compress into oblivion to the point where their drive checking triggers is guaranteed.
Yeah. I wonder if as Ava you want to go to 5 on this turn and just deny any heals and say you need to waste your counterblast on getting out the maximum and you can't laser me for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I do think that's as well, because even though you won't get the damage ping from the laser, the minus 10k still comes up sometimes. But obviously with the grade 1 research, the retire also matters a lot less. So you see here 20k Freiheit coming in. I think he's chosen not to operate because it looks like he still has his soul.
Yeah, I mean, if he's got 2 soul, you want to save the operate for the second Freiheit, so the opponent has to play around you both drawing or multi-attacking.
Yeah. So we're going to see the double intercept there from Obsculades. And now Freiheit will operate the maximum. Set the Ava down to -2. And out comes the Freischutz maximum. So I think, yeah, as you were saying, I think if RelaxingNaps takes this to goes to 5, it puts them in a really good position. They can maybe fish for a defensive, which makes the Freischutz maximum easier to guard. And they deny Welstra being able to, heal down. So
yeah.
The only concern there is that even with only 1 Balderreed and 1 activation of Freischutz Maximum, no Schwarze Eins, no Begina, nothing, Welstra's been able to build a hand, so you can assume at least 1 PG's in there. We've only seen 1 PG go into the damage. So as you were saying earlier, how your crit pressure with Obsculate to have every swing being lethal, that's not guaranteed either.
No, that's true. It has turned to be a pretty scary situation for Ava, even if you've got these techs for the matchup. And that's what just Welstra going first can do to someone, even on an opening that was less than stellar.
Yeah, and like you were saying at the very beginning of this game, how committing the early Radabilio just to have it retired has now made it really difficult for RelaxingNaps, in that they now need to rebuild a board out of effectively thin air. I think 3 or 4 Obsculades out of the deck. So we've lost the Immigrant as well. So they have the energy. They've got 3 energy to reanimate 1, but then not having the other Immigrants sitting on the board to be 8k boosters does hurt your numbers a little bit.
Mm.
And the Immigrant you call out right now, you have to use to superior ride unless you have the other one already in hand. So you're losing a 10k booster on top of that.
Yeah. One of the things that is important about this Ava list in the matchup is that Combine Rusher plus Immigra means you're always going +2 per turn, so it does help stave off the retire pressure from Welstra.
Yeah. We're going to see a no call off the blue lab, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Which means that RelaxingNaps now has, even if they counterblast 1 for the Combine, we've only seen 1 Combine, so they're going to need to make the other rearguard lane from their hand.
Mm. I mean, part of me wants to say you can just call Radiabilio in the other column and get out a grade 3, but that line feels really reliant on you checking a crit.
Counterblast 1 for Ava's act skill there. I think in this scenario, you're definitely looking for either like a Secondal, Valtrossa if he plays it, or just some beat stick at this point.
I mean, the Secondal's interesting because he discarded a Secondal, so it feels like he's not at that much risk of losing Poison and Paradises at this point. So just anybody would do, rather than specifically your resource engine.
Yeah, I think it's also worth mentioning, like, they're probably both aware of the game's speed and pacing up until this point, i.e., this game's probably not going to last more than like 2 or 3 turns after this.
I mean, looking at the search from the Ava side, the fact he hasn't added a lab, that really telegraphs there are 2 labs in hand, and that's not a position you want to be at going into a Welstra Persona ride turn at 5. I think we could see the end of game 1 like within 2 turns.
Yeah, definitely. We've also seen like quite a lot of defensives come out for RelaxingNaps as well. We've seen at least 2 PGs, at the very least the PG that was searched on turn 1 being used the previous turn. So I highly would believe that even though they've been able to compress the deck, there's probably not much more gas coming their way.
No. I mean, we have the inevitable Ava win con of just check OT. But other than that, we are losing out on quite a bit. This is one important thing to think about if you're Zeph in this position, that your opponent has telegraphed they're playing Freezing Wave. So you know that in later games, you need to play around them having these extra big shields.
Yeah. I mean, it could also just be high-level play from RelaxingNaps in resting the order despite not having Freezing Wave to fool your opponent to thinking you have Freezing Wave.
That's true. I actually like that a lot.
So we're going to attack here unboosted, which I think makes sense. Because obviously, I feel like this is the attack you definitely take here. Yeah, the defensive comes down. It's the one that's guaranteed to not be lethal. Because obviously the Vanguard attack now can just go crit Van, crit to the other Obscurade. The Greater Obscurade will have the crit itself. So everything from this point out becomes effectively lethal. The defensive also is really, really strong for effectively negating the Persona Ride. So even though there's the Radiabilio behind that crit Obscurade, this is still definitely guardable. While we haven't seen any PGs come down for Zeph, his hand is fairly healthy. I think as long as the OT doesn't come down, this should all be fairly guardable.
I mean, that Obscurade column is still swinging for 61, so eating out 2 PGs this turn, there is a chance Welstra dies, but I would still think on average he survives him.
Unless, of course, Welstra also has their OT in hand to guard with.
Yeah, that as well. It's basically a 5th PG.
The front, not the crit we need. Heal, useful, but again, not the crit.
And that's like one of the best bits about Welstra, that even if you heal, you just turn back on laser, so...
Yeah. Yeah, I think the crit onto that Great Obscurade would have been really useful for closing this game out here. So, as it stands now, if Zeph was a gambling man, he could just take the Great Obscurade. Because it's only, what, 35? 45. Ooh, so we do see the second PG, which
And
implies
that
he has a
implies the third
third,
PG is
yeah,
also
for this
there.
last Obscurade, or at least OT.
Because I mean, it's a 71k swing. He's got to have something.
There it is, the
There
last
we go.
PG. Impressive.
So skilled.
But again, results is still in the order zone, so no matter what, Relaxing Naps has 20k shield available to them. 50 if you count the freezing wave that may or may not be in rotation. We didn't see
Yeah.
Freiheit being called last turn, so there's no Persona Ride this turn. This is
Although
a lot
the
of steam
freezing
has
wave
vanished.
here is a 40k shield because you have 3 rested plus the torrential.
Yes. But again, the freezing wave may be not even needed, considering that there's no Persona Ride.
That is true.
So double Boulder Reed. This is what I like about Boulder Reed and Troller, is that even without the Persona, this is still a 28k column before any minuses, which is still a really good number. Like, it eats up it eats up at least one of those Obscurades for sure, and it just makes it a little bit harder for Relaxing Naps to like get maximum efficiency out of their shield value. And then you then, like we said, healing back into laser range is a consideration.
So now he needs to hit the defensive to negate the laser.
There it is.
Which he does.
Heal is not active, but the defensive is still appreciated.
Yeah.
I do think the Baldry behind Vanguard should have been behind the Troller, because it does make better numbers. Like, Vanguard's already hitting magic numbers as it was on its own. And then you're going to be attacking with the Troller first, and then attacking with the Freiheit.
Yes, he would be. He does have enough soul for that.
Yeah, he would have had the soul if Baldry was behind Troller anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that's the only thing here that I'm not 100% sure about. Maybe the argument is, you've seen like 2 PGs come down. They haven't, like, they've got a little bit of plussing, yeah. So the gamble was, if Relaxing Naps didn't have another PG here, they would be needing to drop like 3 or 4 cards to guard, and then the Vanguard swing itself might just be lethal. But we do see the
Is there 4
Sanctitude.
cards in hand for Relaxing Naps?
It looks like 5 to me, but it's definitely not a lot.
Yeah. And that double front is a very threatening thing.
This is, of course, the downside of having to go Vanguard first and activate Laser, is that one of the other things I like about the double Freischütz line is that you can put yourself in a position where you're never, quote-unquote, wasting your front power, whereas here, you put fronts on the Troller, and then you'll be bouncing the Troller to make the Freischütz maximum. So your attack, like, you aren't going from weakest numbers to biggest numbers. You're going from, like, small to big, and then back down to medium again, which is sometimes not ideal if you're playing around defensives. And we're... Okay, so we're actually going to go with the Freiheit to Soul Blast 2 to neg 5 again, and then use the Troller to counter Blast 2 to operate the Freischütz maximum.
I like that as well, because it means that you've got the booster for the Freischütz.
Yes.
So it's swinging for more than 23.
Well, it would have been 33. Okay, because no percent, right? So it's...
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
like, it would have just been guarded by the 2 Obscurades, but now it's 2 Obscurades plus a 5.
Yep. So yeah, 30k Freiheit into 5k Ava, because yeah, 8k Ava. So that does guard it, and then the Troller is going to be 35. And yeah, the good thing about this line as well is that, as I just said, you are now going from in ascending order of your number powers. So we went from 30 to 35 to now 36, which is pretty ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah, critically, that Freischütz maximum does not have the double front. But I think this is still going to be really hard for Relaxing Naps to guard unless they are able to defensive OT here.
Because it's now 2 lots of 30k shield, which is a lot to ask for in a 4-card hand.
30 and 35 because of the minus, because they're now on 3k.
But that doesn't change between 35 and 36 now. Like, you're going to 38 both times. Oh, so it's 25k shield twice then.
No, it's 35k shield twice because they're on 3 and then they need to get to
Oh yeah,
38.
35k shield
Yeah.
twice. True.
So yeah, we don't have it, and the 6 damage comes down. So game 1 will go to Zeph.
I think they're just the main thing that decided it was that going first and then checking the crits on turn 3. It put the Welstra in a very advantageous position.
Yeah, like I think definitely Ava wins the grind game. So being able to like deny them of that is definitely very strong.
Part of me wonders how the game would have turned out differently if the Welstra player had extra counterblast on turn 3 to set up the extra maximums.
You think the game might have ended on the Persona right turn?
I'm not sure about that. I just think that it would have been much smoother for him because he would have been able to bounce back the Freischützes, use them turn 4, and then it would have guaranteed the Persona ride for that turn 5, where Ava could have survived barely.
So obviously, RelaxingNaps losing game 1 gets to choose going first, second. I would assume they're going to choose going first because Obscure's crit pressure is not grade 3 opponent locked. But then
Plus, Radiabilio Obscurade on turn 3 is a 46k column, which breaks through a defensive plus an anti-crit heal. It's so disgusting.
The consideration there is that if you're swinging into Welstra with a crit and as they write to grade 3, Welstra is more than happy to go up to 3 damage going into turn 3 because, as we said, it unlocks Divine Skill, Fry Height, and double Freischütz Maximum lines. Which obviously, if you've set up the double Obscurade, isn't as threatening, but it's still pretty threatening.
Yeah. The one good thing about pushing high is that Welstra's plussing is all through blind draw, and the only searching they have is for shieldless cards. So they can't find PGs consistently as a deck like Ava can. So pushing them higher quickly will usually result in you being able to take the win, as long as you've got the necessary defense in hand to survive their combo turn. It's a lot like playing against Varga in that aspect.
But we've also seen at this point, from RelaxingNaps' side, we haven't seen any Valtrosses in their deck. So it's also a question of quote-unquote baiting them to use that early counterblast on the Combine Rusher and then being able to like stop their engine.
Yeah.
Another turn 1 Immigrant discard for Ride Line is consistently very strong. Love to see it. Of course, no energy because going first means that you can't just pull out straight away.
Yeah. One factor here that we'll get to see from Welsh that we didn't see last game is because it runs a lot of grade 1s, it's a deck that's very good at just tri-laning and like putting down pieces, because those grade 1s, if not answered, they end up just going to Soul, providing resources, providing advantage. So you get a very unpunishable rush.
And then if Ava wants to deny those resources and attack the rear guards, Welstra's more than happy to save the shield to not take damage. So it's kind of a lose-lose almost.
Yeah.
This is, of course, on top of being able to search for Lubetzel with the ride line, which is already in their favor.
Definitely.
But we're not going to see the early rush. I think that's a Balderreed.
It's either Balderreed or Torre, I'm not sure.
We're going to see the turn 1 guard there, which I think is interesting. Both heals, so both players down a heal. So, do you not think there's a world where, assuming they had it, of course, RelaxingNaps would have taken the damage and just committed the early counter blast to the Combine Rusher and just been like, cool, like, you want to play fast, I'll show you playing fast?
I think it depends, honestly. Given the fact that the Zeph is playing the game quite slow, you're almost incentivized to just not take that risk of there being a crit there, and then just going, I'll take a damage for turn 3, I'll use that for my skills, and then I'll take some on the Welsh turn, and then I'll go from like 3 to 5 on the Persona ride, and then win the game turn 5.
Yeah.
Because he already gets a 10k attacker out here, so it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, so I guess like it was a question of like, did Ava, or Ava was always gonna have like this extra lanes. So the question was Welstra gonna commit them first? So by not committing first, it kind of, I guess, opens the gate for them to do what she likes. We see a defensive crit coming in there. I think it's also Lubetzel being damaged.
Yeah, it was a Lubatzel. But that's less impactful because it's all searchable this way around.
The second Lubetzel discarded for Ride Line.
Mhm. This one I want to see what Zeph's hand's like if he's getting rid of all these orders.
And again, what you're saying in game one about like attacking the Immigrants to deny the Ava, there's kind of an argument here of like denying here now, right? Because then you deny them the counterblast one to look at top X with Ava's act skill. You force them to have another order before Superior Riding Poison to be able to pull out the Immigrant again, or say have the second Immigrant in hand. And obviously, but then this is now a lose-lose for Welstra because Welstra does want to be the aggressor in this matchup. They want to be pushing the damage. They want to be, saying alter face, threaten crits.
Yeah, plus Welstra as a deck scales inversely against defensives. So leaving Ava at such a low damage in the early game is not where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I would also bet, considering the fact they decided not to deck the extra cards with Torrential, that they have another research in hand. So you're only denying CB1+1, and a defensive would save them many more cards. So I would personally just aggress.
So yeah, we did indeed see the research. And again, I think it's like definitely worth like saying it's not cannot be overstated enough the importance of having like that extra immigrant on the board, like whether it's keeping that 10k attacker or an 8k booster, especially on like early turns like this where Persona Ride's not active and that every like little bit of numbers matters. Like having that extra damage to force through is specifically massive. Like unfortunately there's no second immigrant in rotation at the moment, but if there had been, having one 10k immigrant to attack with into their opponent's 10k Vanguard, and then being able to use the 8k immigrant to insult to Superior Ride means that throughout the entire turn you're hitting them with magic numbers, which is really huge.
Yeah. Like, that's one of the good things about both of these decks, and what makes the matchup quite swingy is that both of them have really good turn 3s, but they also have some decent going second plays. Like Ava just plussing, you get an extra immigrant out, so you get a stronger rush. Welstra, as you said, you get more draws from it.
It's kind of interesting how like whichever deck is going first and second, the dichotomies of like what they do differently going first and second almost cancels each other out. Like sure, you attack more, like in this instance here, Ava going first has better aggro, but then Welstra draws more to almost make up for it. Likewise, vice versa. Welstra gets better aggro going first, but then Ava has a bit more engine to like counter swing with more numbers.
I definitely think the biggest thing in this matchup is like most games will end up being decided by turn 5, and it's just trying to conserve your resources, pray for defensives, and just get there on both sides.
I feel like I've noticed that as a whole during the Divine era of Vanguard. Like, I don't know who it was that said it, but like someone on Twitter was saying how like it's very interesting how games have reached up until this point. Games of Standard was just whoever does the bigger thing faster, whereas now it's more like, especially with Rezael and Shiranui and Wavaga, it's all about like grinding each other down, like keeping a lid on whatever the other opponent is doing until you have the point where the divine skill just puts you far out of ahead. Obviously, with a deck like Welstra, which wants the divine skill immediately, that's less present, but you still have that sense of like, the difference between choosing laser, choosing multi attacks with Freischutz maximum, like when do you like shift gears and try and push basically. So we saw a no guard there and then 2 blanks being checked, which is unfortunate, but I think it's smart for Zeph there to no guard because obviously the first grade 3 turn, Ava hasn't exactly gotten to its notorious level of compression yet. So if you were ever going to no guard a Vanguard swing, that was going to be the safer one to do. They were, well, they didn't get defensive, so it wasn't fully rewarded, but they were definitely rewarded for that risk. And the first of PG comes down there for the crit obscurate. So we're going to see how this works out, because obviously, as we've said, 3 damage on Welstra is exactly where you want to be. Gives you enough damage for Divine Skill, gives you enough damage to activate a Fry Height. If you have counter charges, you can then multi-attack on top, which is really, really strong. Ooh, we see Laser being discarded there for the ride line.
Another important thing is now that there's going to be no more Lubetzels played this game, as we see 2 in damage, 1 in order zone, 1 in drop.
Yeah.
It definitely seems like Zeph's hand here has not been good for rushing, and it's just been filled with orders, which is quite unfortunate.
Yeah. The only way Lubetzel can come back into rotation now was if he has the Jewel Cat to add it back. And even in those situations, I think you'd rather be either A, using it for 20k shield, or B, adding back the second laser.
Although the second laser is much more important when you go first compared to going second. Because if you get to choose between EB3 or Soul Charge 1, I think Welstra would usually go for the Soul Charge 1.
Yeah. I'm also not 100%, but I feel like he energy charged unnecessarily there, because he should be on 6 at the start of this turn, because you energy blast 3 to draw a card off the Uber.
He energy charges 3, then he energy charges 3 from laser, and then he energy blasts 7 to draw.
But he energy blasted 7 to draw before he activated Divine Skill to play laser. So I think there's a slight missequencing here. The end result is kind of the same. It's just a case of he should have drawn that card after he operates Lubetzel.
Yeah.
It's obviously VPL is a casual league, so and it's already happened, so I'm not going to go on too much about it. But it is worth mentioning that I think he's jumped ahead there and energy charged 3 from the laser before he should have, is what I think happened. That, or he start of turn energy charge 3 twice, which that's a bit more if he goes from 2 to 5 here, then we'll know that something's definitely gone wrong.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, okay, so I think he either forgot to energy blast 3 for Uber, or he's start of turn charge 3 twice. Of course,
let's hope it's the first one.
I don't think it really matters, because we haven't seen Seyfried or Panspermia in this list. But if the game goes turn 8 and he gets an energy blast 7 to draw again, that's
yeah.
Welstra
is a deck that doesn't really care about energy past turn 3. You always have enough to do whatever you want, so it probably doesn't matter that much in the grand scheme of things.
It's also worth mentioning here that we did find the double Bobelmine, so even though we had Freiheit to search the Persona Ride, we didn't have the second Freiheit Maximum in hand, so again, not going to be 5 attacks. And what's really unfortunate here is that if he wants to Energy Blast, bounce the Bergina to pull out the Freiheit Maximum, he's not going to have a Freiheit Maximum in the order zone for the Freiheit to operate to give an extra minus 5k.
Of course, he can always just attack with Welstra, operate the maximum for the minus 5 kill radio, and just not counterblast, and then the Freiheit will grab out the Bergina.
Yep, but then you're losing value on front triggers. So it's definitely that opportunity cost of, do I want to lead into the fronts and push damage here, or do I want to maximize my value? So yeah, we are actually going to see the Freiheit Maximum being operated here. So Freiheit definitely is not going to go minus 5. It's probably going to be draw a card off of Lubetzel, but I think that's still fine.
I mean, drawing a card, it helps get you into your defensive pieces, which the Persona Ride turns are scary. I can see why you'd want that. Although I think at this point, we're down 2 radios on the Ava side.
So the numbers aren't going to be as threatening.
Yeah.
But the thing to consider there is that Ava's still only on 1 damage. There's a chance that Ava just no guards this and takes the risk of double crit coming down, but they're only on minus 5, so they're an 8k body, staring down an 18k Freiheit and a 23k Freiheit Maximum, both of which super guardable, one of which is just Obscurate Intercept. I feel like having the extra -5 on that fry height there would have been really, really valuable for pushing that damage that Welstra so desperately wants to get onto the board. Again, no guard is punished with the 2 blanks. PG does go in. Not ideal. And
Okay, you get a card draw. Which is understandable, because these attacks are 15 and 20. So that Obscurade kind of just remains on the board doing nothing.
I think there's almost an argument to taking the second damage just so that you turn on your heals.
I don't like that prospect that much. If your hand's weak, I'd probably do it, but it feels like it's an unnecessary risk when you're already quite far ahead in this game.
But then the defensive also makes the Freshets Maximum Obscurade guard.
That's true. But then that's like, it's really good if you hit a defensive and if you hit the heal.
Which you do.
True.
I think you can definitely... I think it's worth banking on, because again, like, your drive checks were blank, your first damage was a blank. And sure, you may not have, like, maximum compress like Ava does, but you did do a little bit of compression. You know, searching for poison, which searches for order, and then poison searches for Obscurade.
He's probably compressed like 7-8 cards.
Which I think is, you know, a reasonable position to be in. So Blue Lab comes down. Do we find Obscurade off the top? I don't think so.
Good, so.
Yeah, I don't think we did. Otherwise, I probably would have seen it slammed immediately. Unless they're choosing between Grade 2 versus Grade 3 Obscurade. Ooh, Immigrant. So that implies that they definitely already have another attacker in the hand. Because you're going to go Counterblast 1 to bring back the Combine Rusher. So then we'll see what we're going to attack with on the other side. You could just attack with the Immigra. You know, it is still going to be an 18k body with Persona Ride. It's not awful.
Yeah.
It's not ideal, but it's not awful.
Although Welstra's hand is pretty big, so just asking for 1 trigger, it doesn't feel that strong at this point in the game. I would like to see more from the either side.
So double Immigra comes out. I think in this particular scenario, depending on what your other attacker is going to be, I would have liked to see the Combine Rusher in front of the 8k Immigra. And then I would have probably given up the 10k Immigra in Soul to Superior Ride. Because then you at least have 28k on the Combine Rusher boosting for magic numbers.
Yeah. I also don't know how important it is to keep the Immigra behind the Vanguard. Because your Vanguard's inherently 28, you can make it 33 with the order.
I mean, 28 versus 38, I think is pretty major, given that Welstra's going to be incentivized to take the first 1 or 2 points of damage to deny heals, and then fish for their defensives. So being able to have that Immigrant negated defensive, I think, is huge. It's more of a case of, in the scenario that it is now, assuming that Ava has their third Radabilio, you want the Radabilio to be boosting the crit Obscurade, but you want to be calling your crit Obscurade over your Combine Rushers. So, assuming the Radabilio does come down, Radabilio won't be boosting the crit Obscurade unless you Ava to call over whatever's in front of the Radabilio. In which case you're leaving a Combine on the board, which is definitely not ideal either.
No, that's 100% correct. It's a pretty weird position here. I definitely think earlier on, when he discarded a Radiabilio for Ride deck, I would have liked to keep that in hand, because in this matchup, they really are your most important currency.
Of course, we did have the third one anyway. We'll see the second Combine come down, so everything I just said doesn't matter. We are still going to call an Obscurade over a Combine Rusher and then boost it with a Radabilio. So it all works out.
Another interesting thing is this is the second game in a row that on turn 4, we've added Torrential instead of a copy of Blue Lab.
Yeah.
So you might be wondering, as the Welstra player, how many Blue Labs are they actually on? Because some Evilists do play less than 4.
Yeah. but then also at the same time as the Welstra player, I don't think it really matters because you're the one who wants this game to end sooner rather than later. So for Ava, that third or fourth copy of Blue Lab maybe also just doesn't matter.
True.
So interestingly, Welstra chose to guard that first swing. So instead of denying Ava's heals and fishing for defensive, they're kind of banking on a no guard as well, which no crit so far. No crits. Are we going to get punished?
We saw the freezing wave get revealed.
So yeah, no defensive, but still absolutely zero punishment coming in there from Welstra's side. And then just going in with this big lethal swing and just doing the PG check.
I think Welstra probably only has one PG in hand from how he guarded this time.
Yep, which we see there. So now the downside is that this last Combine Rusher boosted by this 10k Immigra is just basically irrelevant.
I mean, you obviously send it into fry height, which is still decent. You can try to guarantee and push to 5, but I feel that just gives Welstra unnecessary resources.
Yeah, which he's gladly taking. The critical third damage there as well, as we saw in the previous game. That's Troller counterblast. And Troller is definitely scary in going to the position. So there's the final Persona Ride coming down from Welstra. Last one is, of course, in damage. So can Welstra clean it up this turn? Laser is live. There's the Troller. There is everything we need. Ava is only on 3 damage though, so it's not like they're not in a dangerous position. There's also, like, given how low Welstra's hand is, I think depending on what comes down from the laser damage, there might be a world where you just no-guard their Vanguard swing. I think we've seen quite a few crits come in from the Welstra play already as well, right?
I mean, that's a possibility, but with how Ava's hand's shaping up, I feel you never want to try to do that. Just because it is one of Welstra's few outs remaining at this point.
Yeah. The Bobomine not being a Balder read is also makes that defensive sting even more. But then again, Ava not having 2 Obscurades on the board is definitely a position you like to see from the other end of the table. So we're going 33 into 13, which is it's still not easy to guard, but it's definitely not unguardable. I just still do think like there's an argument to just no guarding here, like because Zeph has guarded with quite a few crits already. 2 of them was defensive taken. I feel like if you were ever going to take a risk, this would be a huge risk to take because the payoff is just unbelievably large.
That's valid. I'm surprised that the Combine Rusher was left on the board, because now it does make it quite likely that he's going to guard this Vanguard swing, just so you can use up that Combine Rusher before it gets retired.
There's the crit. I want to say Alter Troller here. Oh, Alter Freiheit.
I mean, you want to give it to whichever one you swing first with.
I think that's fair, yeah. But again, we're incentivized here to not counterblast the one to pull out the Freiheit's maximum.
Yeah, but the Troller would be swinging bigger anyway, so yes. It feels better to have the Troller going second.
So this is 38 into 8. So even trigger plus Obscurate is not enough.
No, you need to trigger 2 Obscurates. Or just trigger normal.
So even though Ava's on 4, there's a chance we might just see it here, because these numbers, like the shield being asked for this turn, is only going to keep increasing. I think there's a good chance that even though Ava's hand is fairly healthy, they just might just be full of like 5Ks and Obscurades, and just not quite enough.
I didn't know because we saw the freezing wave, and that's a 40k, and he only needs to guard one more attack because he's at 5. There are 2 more attacks. Sorry, he's at 4. There are 2 more attacks this time.
Yep.
So the freezing wave will prevent him from dying here.
Yeah, because the freezing wave can just blank the Freshets maximum swing.
Yeah.
So this is 25, 33. So 33 into 3. So the freezing wave blanks this as well, actually, which is fairly solid. Can't complain.
Because they're both 33s at this point.
Yes. So then it'd be better. If you're going to take one, you take this one.
Yeah.
That or you just guard both, which is also not unreasonable.
I'm not asking for 35k shield plus freezing wave.
So both players losing a persona right there. Poison going to damage, which only leaves, I think, 1 left?
Well, it depends. Most lists are on 4 pip, although
Yeah.
I have seen some lists trending towards 3.
I mean,
but
we've seen 2 being used, right?
Yeah.
And then 1 in damage, so there's only 1 left in the deck.
But like the 3 pip lists are on many more secondals than we've seen so far in this game. So I would expect there to still be 1 more in deck.
OT coming down, it's definitely something you'd love to see. Surprised that RelaxingNaps didn't use the freezing wave there instead of holding onto the OT bluff.
That's true.
Like, they've definitely got the soul for it. Like, the only reason to save that soul is if you're planning to use Secondal this turn. Which is obviously not impossible.
I mean, at this point, the secondal draw doesn't really matter. It's more if you want to double or triple radio.
I think we've seen all the radios.
We've seen 3, so there's potential for a 4th.
But with only 1 left, double or triple radio is basically impossible.
That's true.
Unless you secondal the Radiobilia, which is definitely be a line.
Or you could get the Valtros that you certainly play and send the radio back in that way.
Finally see the Obscurate come in off of the blue lab. Of course, having all of your swings have a crit here is kind of irrelevant when your opponent is less relevant when your opponent's at 5.
Yeah, it does help play around loyalty though, which is one of the things I'd like to cover if I was in RelaxingNaps position.
Top 5 from Ava. Definitely helps with the compression game.
Yeah, very powerful, just finding the extra defense that you need every time.
Or in this case, maybe finding an extra booster, like maybe the 4th radio if he has it.
True. Both would be really good choices here.
No more orders to search for, though.
So
only running 3 blue lab rather than 4, unless the 4th one's in hand.
If I was Zeph, I would make a bet that your opponent's only on 7 orders.
Unless they're all in hand, because we haven't seen the grade 2 order either. Which I think quite a few Avas are playing as a one-off.
The deck plays either 8 or 7, so there's a potential there's 1 more order in hand, but then we're asking for 1 extra order in hand twice. Plus, that order would have been a copy of the grade 3. Both games. It's unlikely to be a grade 2. Because I would prioritize the grade 2 over the grade 1.
So it's a Condor recycling a Poison Paradise. Not Soul Blasting 3 to draw, despite there being no Radabilio.
I mean, it depends. He might... Because he wants the Soul Blast 1 for the +5. And then he needs the pseudo Soul Blast 1 for the on attack.
Yes. And I think it looks like he's only got 3 Soul at the moment. So yeah, if he had Soul Blasted 3, he wouldn't have been able to go the +5 off of Blue Lab. So as
Another
quickly as I said, it was looking good for Welstra. With only 8 cards in hand and 2 PGs gone, there's a chance that Zeph loses here this turn.
Yeah, I think the big issue is just like these decks really can't take a second Persona Ride turn from each other because of how explosive they are. That just when you get to turn 5, it's super rough for the player going second.
Unless we see like several heals from either side, which we
Mm.
haven't this game.
True.
I do like this line of play though, which is instead of like pressuring multiple crit attacks, you're going with the crit attacks first and then leaving that one, the non-crit obfuscate last. Just so that, because they're already 5, going to 6 is already going to be lethal, and you're just poking them and just forcing the maximum shield immediately now, rather than giving them the chance to like hit the defensive OT.
One of the things that I really like here is I'm not sure if he still has Obscurades in deck, but he chooses to go for the one from drop, which leaves the Poison in Paradise on the bottom of the deck, impossible to be lost.
PG heal. So once
That heals big. Although it does mean he can lose to a 6 damage heal here.
see it, nope, Troller goes down. So that is tied up 1-1. We will be going to game 3.
Where Welstra gets to go first. As the Eva player, I would be scared.
So yeah, we saw the second Freischuss in Zeph's hand there. And I think it's just a case of really unfortunate that they weren't able to set it up on turn 3 to get the 5 attack combo immediately.
Yeah. I think that's just an unfortunate issue with Welstra sometimes. You play so many orders that you're bound to eventually draw quite a few of them.
Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting is that both of these are both Brandt Gate decks who, by virtue of deck building, have to play more orders and as a result have overall less effective shield value in their decks. But because Obfuscate is what it is, and because of how much value the orders give Ava defensively, whereas all of Welstra's orders are offensive pressure, it's you can very easily turn those 0k shields in Ava into shield power, whereas it's a lot harder to convert from Welstra's side.
Although 6 of Welstra's orders do replace themselves by drawing a card,
Mm-hmm.
and the Lubetzels, they draw a card when operated. So it's
Yeah.
not like Welstra has 0 shield. It's more that Ava's is filtering, whereas Welstra's is just a blind draw.
Yeah, it's just a case of in
Draw
Ava's.
0 shield cards left in deck.
Yeah, it's just that in Welstra's case, they need more cards to make the same shield value, which obviously does make things hard. And I mentioned Jewel Cat earlier. We haven't seen it yet in either of the 2 games. Sure, most Welstra lists only play a 1 of, some play a 2 of, but it's a card that you would expect would have come up at least once in the course of 2 games, especially given how much of their decks these builds go through.
I also think it is quite likely that he doesn't play it, because I have seen Jewel Cat at 0 in quite a lot of lists.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know the list I was on for a while didn't play it, just because I preferred other grade 1s for consistency.
So both players are taking a quick break there before they start game 3, which is definitely understandable. Best of 3s are not something we have very often in Vanguard, and if you're not used to them, they can be quite a bit of a mental toll.
Yeah. Definitely, it's something I like to practice while I'm testing, just to do it in reps of 3 for situations like this. So now we're going into game 3 here, and I assume Wells just going to choose to go first, so it's going to be interesting to see how much of this game resembles game 1. Ava has also been able to, in both of these games, search for their henceforth on turn 2, and if they have a less than stellar opening, they will lose out on a lot of shield, because they won't be able to do that. So this game is Welstra favoured, definitely, because things went pretty okay for Ava last game, and they still lost, but Ava still definitely has a chance.
Yeah. The one thing I am afraid of going first as Welstra is not hitting the Lubetzel on turn 2, and then being forced to put Dog into the order zone, which is always a feel bad moment.
Although you can just discard Dog for your ride deck turn 3 and then use Dog skill to put itself in. It's not as good. In fact, it's pretty bad, but
Yeah,
it's
like
not.
you're still losing out on the soul
You go like -3, basically.
instead of -1. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then the only benefit there is that you can at least like operate the dog to be a 10k body if your opponent hasn't hit defensive and try and rush them down a bit.
oh, I would never do that. I prefer just keeping it in hand for that ride deck ditch on the next turn. Because you just put it to order zone on the ditch, and then you resolve your ride line grade 2.
But I think there is also an argument here. We were saying how last game going second as Welstra, there are arguments for just like making guy turn one and just going 8 into your opponent's 8k body. Going first on your turn two, your opponent's still going to be an 8k body, and you now have the option to commit things like an extra Bergina or an extra Troller just to swing with those numbers. So having the 10k booster for those to get over the defensive is not awful either.
Definitely. Both players here have opened pretty good with an Immigrant being discarded for Relaxing Naps and Zeph discarding a Lubetzel.
Which definitely tells you he has a second.
He could have just discarded Very Copy, we don't know that for certain.
That would definitely be a big ball move. PG found off of the order. This is the only way this time could be better for Ava is to discard a second Immigrant.
Definitely. Gets to swing the double 8s as well. It's a very good position.
I'm really curious to see whether or not Welstra's going to let themselves take like 2 to 3 damage going into grade 3 and just, quote unquote, punish Ava just by going like with the 5 attack turn, using all that counterblast and just blitzing them up to like 3 or 4 damage before they hit grade 3.
I definitely think you want to, because every turn that Ava stays on grade 3 is another turn where you're whittling down your PGs, and then eventually you just have to take one of those massive 2 crit swings.
Yeah. It's like interesting they got the Immigrant there, because if you just taken that and kept the trigger, next like this turn now, you're on grade 2, unless Relaxing Naps continues to make more bodies, which they can only do by committing pieces, that Immigrant's not going to hit the Vanguard, so you'd effectively be saving the extra guard anyway, and you'd still have like 3 damage going into the turn 3 turn. So I feel like it was a very greedy guard there.
Yeah. And then the Lubetzel we know about?
Yep. Soul charges the OT, not ideal.
On the one blind soul charge the game, of course he does soul charge the OT.
We do, of course, now have the option to Energy Blast Reach to draw a card for the Lubetzel. So yeah, this is what I was saying, like having the early Troller just to like poke a little bit with and like get value out of any triggers you might check is just really, really solid. And it doesn't it's not like it bothers Ava, I think, but it just helps him like keep that tempo in his favor.
One thing that I haven't seen so far that I really like to do with Welstra is just on that turn 2 putting a rearguard behind my Vanguard, because now this can just get 15 pretty easily, whereas before if you have that booster it's then like a very awkward situation for the opponent.
Yeah, because I guess anything you would boost Vanguard with continues to provide value moving forward, like Schwarzer Irons or Bobomine.
Or also Balladrid.
So we see poison and damage and guarding the Vanguard swing. As you say, without the booster, the Vanguard can be guarded effectively, which we saw. Healing off the Bobomine was nice. It gives Welstra a lot of breathing room. But again, you've now denied yourself, like, there's a world where Ava rides grade 2, pulls the Immigrant back, and just goes 10 to Troller, and now you don't even have Counterblast for Divine Skill, which is backbreaking.
God, I think if the Ava player does that, I will go and give them a high five. I love in grindier decks just telling the Welstra player, you have no Counterblast turn 3. I'm going to put you back an entire turn.
I would say it's almost game losing, because you have to wait until the Persona Ride turn to set the laser, which means you have to wait until the second Persona Ride to operate the laser, And you're hoping that by second Persona Ride, one of you is on 5 damage, at which point the laser is irrelevant.
Because especially if we think about this being a turn 5 game, that laser becomes a turn 6 card. So you just remove one of the best support cards Welstra got in the Divines era from the contention of this game, just by swinging Rare.
Oh, there's the Immigrant pullback. Are we going to see a body? Or are we just going to see 10 to 10? Or fishing for a trigger, maybe? No, we are just going to go all in. Which I don't hate. I think there is value to it. But yeah, this is the risk there, right? Hitting that defensive. Now Ava's entire turn is just poofed. And like they're still going to hit the Troller. But it's,
the annoying thing about Grade 2 Obscudite is that it needs the 3 orders to get the +5 power and +5 shield. So that rearguard column doesn't hit over a defensive. And also, he's only put like 10k shield in his front row total, not the 20k that it'll become next turn.
So now we're seeing 18 at Troller, which is going to be guarded. And now, the crit all into Van we saw there is like, if I'm... Also, we've just been getting this wrong the entire time. It's Zeph playing Ava and RelaxingNaps playing Welstra. So apologies to the players there. Very sorry. But so if I'm RelaxingNaps in this situation, I'm cheering that my opponent got a crit. Like that gives me all the counterblast to do everything I want with. So I feel like Zeph took a risk and it has now massively backfired for them.
Definitely. If RelaxingNaps has one countercharger here and a Freiheit, he gets to do the full 5 attack combo going first.
Yeah.
And that is
although 2 Bubble Beams have been in damage, and one of them was healed out, so it's not likely, unless we see them playing the I can never remember its name, but the Grade 1 robot.
Yeah, I suppose the decks are on lower countercharger counts now because of Baldreed. Whereas before we used to be on like 8 counterchargers, now you play sort of 4 to 6.
Yep. Speaking of, Baldreed comes down off of the Lubetzel operate.
Yep.
And contrary to game 1, we're actually seeing now RelaxingNaps forget to start a turn energy charge 3, because they should be on 6. And then they should go to 9 with the laser.
No, shouldn't he be on 3?
Should he be on? Right, no, because he went first. Yeah.
Yes, he went first.
I'm getting confused. Freiheit comes down. The fact that Freiheit's not being used here tells you that they already have the Persona Ride in hand, and they're not chasing 5 attacks. Instead, they are just going to use the Counterblast on Troller instead.
I mean, one thing is, you talk about how good it is for the Welstra player that they've got all this Counterblast to play with, but this time they only need 2. And the hand is 4 cards. It's going to 8 by the end of the turn, maybe 9?
No, if they want to use Troll... So the third Counterblast, if they're not using the Freiheit to search, then the Counterblast can be used for Troller to operate on attack. And the third Counterblast to flick the Freiheit into Freischutz Maximum.
But then that's still only an 8-card hand, and they've checked 2 0 shield cards. I think there is a world where the Eva player just hits a Grade 3 Obscudite off of the lab, calls down a Radiabilia or 2, and just kills next turn.
Yeah, I guess that's... Especially because, as we said, the Baldreed not being able to search for Persona Rides, or PGs, sorry, means that any defensive power you have has come from the draws, of which there are not many this turn.
And in fact, out of all the cards in the Welstra player's hand, we know that 4 to 5 of them do not have good shield on.
Yeah.
So he's basically playing with a 4-card hand on the defense.
So there's the Freischutz Maximum. I'm also curious to note that he didn't use Baldreed in Soul to top 5 there.
I feel that there is also a situation here where Welstra runs out of countercharge. Because that's one of the issues with Troll. Especially if he's damaged some Bulba Mines so far this game.
Yeah, it definitely puts a clock on the grind game that Welstra would have been able to play otherwise.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, the blue lab going in is not ideal. We should be able to assume that Zeph already has one to be able to play the game with.
Yeah. Because you would never commit that hard if you just had no other order.
So as you say, Welstra's hand is full of small shield. You need at least one PG to not die, and even then, that involves taking one of the two critted obscurate swings.
Mm.
So it's
That's the
definitely going to be
second
an uphill battle.
deck as well.
Mm-hmm.
But this game does not look like it's going to be reaching as far as needing 3 to 4 pips.
Yeah, I think both players have identified correctly that grinding is not in the option here, and it's just now, we're kind of back to early D era where it's just whoever goes bigger, faster wins. We're going to see Ava counterblast one act at the very start of the turn, though, which finds the third research, which is huge.
That is huge. Because you had not too many outs.
I think that definitely told us that they didn't have the blue lab in hand already, which could have been disastrous if they were going into this turn without the third order.
Yeah. If Ava whiffed the 3 orders and had to stay on base, I think that is just the end of the game.
Because again, the Immigras being retired by Freischütz Maximums makes it really hard to reliably guarantee your pieces. Because in a way, each Immigra guarantees the next one because each one's the Persona Ride searches. But then if you don't start the chain, there is no chain.
True. It is once you get going with Ava, it's a very hard resource engine to stop, but you have to actually get going.
I think the biggest thing that RelaxingNaps is grateful for here is that there's no Persona Ride power coming in. So those Obscurades are only going to be 20, which, when your hand is full of 5Ks, that's a very guardable number. And then if you have the PG, you just save it for the single crit Obscurade that comes in.
Yeah. Especially, I think you can probably also intercept with Troll in this position.
Yep.
Because it has served its purpose. So that's another card you can deal with on the small shield side.
Exactly. And you don't need the Troll as a body because there's a Bergina and a Freiheit in your hand.
Yeah, definitely.
The only concern is that Welstra definitely wants to take some damage this turn. But I think there's a way for Zeph to get around that, which is to throw the first Obscurade at the Troller. And then Vanguard at that, when you go Vanguard to Vanguard, RelaxingNaps probably could risk the no guard on the Vanguard swing, but you probably don't want to do that, I'd say. But I think that's the only safe sort of damage you have, because Ava Poison will attack, pull out the Obscurade with a crit, and then you risk them drive tricking the crit onto that Obscurade to be a 3 damage lethal swing.
That's true. I feel you do have to take the Vanguard then, because otherwise they can just leave you at something very low and just you are just dead in the water.
So I think that what I said actually did transpire. I think we saw the 20k Obscurade at the Troller. So now we're in a position where RelaxingNaps has to say, please don't check crit OT.
Well, just 2 crits would do it. 1 crit would also do it, pretty much. But it takes an extra turn.
There's a heal, which is live.
That's very big. That's another good reason for swinging at the Troller, because you can keep yourself in heal range.
Second check. It's a front, okay. That's actually ideal for RelaxingNaps, because now they can also... Where did the second damage?
Yeah, oh no, I think they realized.
Yeah, there we go. I was about to say, they can now take the grade 2 Obscurade as well to go to 5, and then that gives them a bit more leeway to play around and push aggro. Of course, 5 to 2 is definitely not good damage numbers, but it gives you that chance to buy some time, spend your resources, and build up a chance to survive the Persona Ride turn while pushing back with your own Persona Ride turn. That is, of course, this is all predicated on RelaxingNaps having the PG for this Obscurade.
Yeah.
Which they do.
They do.
Because this has been, what, 51? No, because it's
Um,
the total grades of order is only 3, so it's only
It's
28
28
plus
plus
13.
18. Uh, it, oh, true, it's only 3, yeah.
Yeah. So,
So 41.
which is actually pretty guardable if your hand had more than 2 triggers in it.
Yeah.
So I think now Zeph is deciding: do I want to give Welstra, like, do I push him to 5 to make it easier to win, but give them that second damage that they can then play around with? And we're going to go for it. It's only 1 damage, and we're going to take it. So Relaxing Naps, they're valuing the second counter blast. It gives them access to Fry Height plus Freshest Maximum.
I think there was a strong argument to not, just because 2 PGs are already out. So them
Yeah.
single healing isn't that much of a threat.
I do agree. I think the only argument there is that they might not have the second Persona Ride, so they might need the counter blast for Fry Height to get there. And obviously, they'll want to save counter blast for Freshest Maximum. And as you said, a lot of bubble beans are out, so counter charging is probably hard to come by here. Or we're going to see a Vagina counter blast instead.
Although as Eva, we are in a pretty secure position. I think we've added 2 PGs to hand so far this game.
Yep, one of which has been used.
Mm.
But yeah, we have 1 PG at least for this turn. We draw check a front as well, which is pretty solid. You have to assume there's a freezing wave, because why else would you rest the torrential energy if you didn't need to?
Well, I mean, you can always do it just as bait.
Fry Height comes down. Not going to search Persona Ride. There's the countercharger we desperately need. And then laser to shoot Radabilio. Hopefully a defensive doesn't come in off of the laser ping. Oof, hate to see it.
That is not good. Another important point is looking ahead to Ava's turn. While the deck has a really strong resource loop, they haven't even started it properly yet because they haven't got their Immigrant back into drop. So they'd need a freezing wave or to find. Actually, no, they can just use the Soul Blast 1 Rest 3 beforehand. So they do have it all.
Yep.
That's true. Or if they just have a freezing wave now, that's even better.
Well, you say better. This is still a 41k Vanguard swing coming in.
I mean more that like you get to use your +5
After you ride, yeah. Yeah, 41k Vanguard means that freezing wave and double intercept is still a 1 to pass. So I think this is either PG or take, honestly. And if it's a take, you obviously risk dying on the spot to double crit.
I mean, it's a pretty safe take. Weltra's only a twin drive deck, so. And you can see a few crits out.
Mm-hmm. Also worth mentioning, they didn't Soul Blast 2 for the Bergina before drive checks, which I usually prefer to Soul Blast to draw for Bergina during the main phase if I can. But it looks like here they're trying to save the Bergina Soul Blast 2 for after, unless they don't have enough Soul after using Fry Height. So we are going to boost with the Bergina, which makes this a 33k into 13. So it is still big enough that 2 intercepts won't get you there.
Well, that's still pretty good. Just have 2 more attacks this time for Ava. There's not much possibility of dying.
Mm-hmm.
It really just comes down to how fake the Welstra hand is then. I do like
as you've seen from the drive checks, they're not massive.
Yeah.
Like, no
I do like
triggers
the
at least.
adding a bit more deck compression because sometimes you can hit a 6th heal in this situation.
I guess that's the argument to like waiting until you after the Vegina, you Baldo read to search for the cards you don't want to be drawing, so that the Bajina blind drawer is more likely to find you a trigger or a PG.
Yeah, that's true. Because that is one of the issues with Balladreed. It always finds you cards that aren't immediately usable.
Yeah. So now we're going to see 20 into 8. And I think this is definitely the safe take here.
I would want to guard this because it's just a 15 and then take the Freischütz maximum.
The intercept is not enough. You will need a trigger. I think that's the only reason I consider taking this one, because the numbers are a little bit weird. Whereas, like, you can take this, go to 4, arguably even take the Freischütz maximum, go to 5, and then just do whatever the hell you want.
That's true, although going to 5 into Welstra is never a good position. Maybe you can do it in this matchup because the opponent has shown that they don't really go for double maximum that much.
Was the intercept enough though, or did he swing at rear?
Because I think he swung at rear.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a 33k Freischütz maximum.
33 to 8, yeah.
And I actually do like the swing to rear play there, because again, you force Ava to have to rebuild a board, and like
another thing is that would be a 33k rear guard otherwise.
Yes.
So just getting rid of it, it reduces a lot of the threat.
Especially because we haven't seen any combine rushes from Zeph this game yet either.
True.
Unfortunately, the Obscurate does come down off the lab. So that's an
good.
extra PG. That's now a second PG that we're asking for this turn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think those strong early triggers there for Zeph is, even though we said that like it's what RelaxingNaps wanted, being unable to like recoup and guard effectively that previous turn is now, I think, what's going to lose him this game here.
Yeah. Definitely. This is not a good position for Welstra to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the first time we've seen that, like, when you're approaching these matchups where both players are trying to win on the same turn and you're going second, you have to play in a much more aggressive fashion and play riskily. And RelaxingNaps didn't really take into account that fact. And that helped Zeph get ahead in this game and potentially win it for his team.
The only comment here is that I don't think there's an Immigrant in rotation. Yeah, so
that does change things.
Because obviously he didn't have access to the Soul Blast 5 until he played the order. But then playing the order means that Immigrant doesn't see the order being played. So that Counterblast 1 top 4 from Ava had to have found an Immigrant here, or we're just going to see a vanilla Ava swing. So,
although DBT08 Ava is still a good deck.
It is still solid. It's more in this case, losing the Persona Ride numbers suddenly makes this kind of guardable for Welstra almost. Doubly so if Zeph can't make a third body to attack with, because then it would just be 3 attacks, 2 of which have to be guarded, sure, but it's still 1 less attack that has to be guarded. So okay, so we do see the Combine Rusher come down.
But it does not look like we have the Immigrant at this point.
Yeah, so yeah, we're just going to go straight in. So 20k on the Combine, which is Intercept 5k, which RelaxingNaps definitely has to give up.
Yeah, you have to with all the 5s in hand at this point.
But then the issue is that even without Immigrant's rotations and without like poison deck thinning, Ava's compressed to the point where I would still not feel comfortable no guarding that Vanguard swing.
Yeah. I suppose you can tutor pass, but you do need a front for that in hand specifically. And then you have rear guards that are...
Or trigger intercept.
Yeah.
And then the elephant in the room is that you're still dealing with a pair of crit obscurades, which is not exactly easy to deal with.
Definitely not.
And like, even if you take the no risk and no guard this Vanguard swing and they don't get crits, you then need to 6 damage heal just for those obscurades to even be remotely guardable.
Yeah. Well, they are only 20. They're 23 and 28, so they are pretty guardable currently. It's just at some point in this time you do need to heal definitely.
Yep, so 4, 5 crits out. So actually, a no god might actually be, like, banking on the 6th heal might actually be not unreasonable all of a sudden.
Mhm. If you're having to drop 3 cards for it, though, it probably is.
No, so we did see the no god OT. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
we'll see if the 6 damage heal would have come out, but this is definitely it. There's very little coming back from this.
Double
Yep.
6 heals.
So it is not happen. So Zeph will take it for the Dinobozos. There we go. So Ava, even though going second there, being able to respond effectively with that early Immigra, with that crit following up, just meant that Welstra wasn't able to stabilize effectively going into their turn 3 turn.
Yeah, I must say, I think the MVP of that match was 100% the results of the experiment henceforth.
Mm-hmm.
Zeph generated like 100k of shield over the set with it. It
Yeah.
helps him survive so many times.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those ones where, even if we saw as well that Zeph had a really strong opening hand, but it's still a scenario where, like, in game 2, game 3, where we only had one Immigra in rotation, you still had the scenario where, like, you're still choosing to go for the experiment henceforth just to protect your obfuscades, because even if you whiff, like, worst case scenario, you draw the poison in paradise and you manually persona right at the start of turn, which means you lose out on the counterblast on top X from Ava. But then, like, you can still play the game. Whereas if your obfuscates are permanently getting retired every turn, you're suddenly not playing the game.
Yeah. Just that's your greatest tool as Ava when you're a rearguard based deck into a retire matchup is just don't let your rearguards get retired.
Yeah, exactly. I would say, like, I think looking back on it, I did think it was possible for RelaxingNaps to win that game 3. I just feel like they maybe guarded a bit too aggressively in the early game, and as a result, they gave up what precious few shields they had on places they didn't need to. I think that may have, if they had an extra 15k, like, on the first grade 3 turn, on the persona right turn, they might have been able to keep themselves a bit lower on damage, but obviously hindsight is 2020.
Yeah, I agree on that. I think that the theory of sort of this being a very turn 5y matchup does come true the one time where we saw the game end earlier is that point where the variance was in the favor of just of RelaxingNaps being pushed so high that the turn 4 was lethal before he could get all his PGs into hand.
Yeah.
And that's just the thing that Ava has over Welstra is just that top X skill, just looking for your PGs.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm not going to be updating the spreadsheet on this video, but I can show you, I'll be doing it in post, so you can now see here that Dinobozos gets into a 1-0 lead over the Owl Coop, but this is just the start of the finals. There's still 8 more games to go, so, stay tuned to the channel to see the rest of the games. So, thank you everyone for watching. Thanks again to Sage for joining me on this, and hopefully, if you want to see more about Grand Blue, Brain Rot, and other Vanguard statistics and other decent takes, feel free to check her out. I'll link her socials down in the description below. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video on Yellow Card TCG. Have a good night. Take care.